Oh my goodness, you guys. Come sit down because we genuinely need to have a conversation right now. I need everybody to pull up a chair, grab your snack, silence your phone, and lock in. Because what is unraveling with Drake at this very moment is unlike anything we have ever witnessed in the history of rap music. And it is getting uglier by the hour. I am not exaggerating, I wish I was, but the receipts are stacking so high right now that I honestly do not know where to begin, except to say that by the time we get through all of this together, you are going to look at this man completely differently. And if you already looked at him differently, congratulations, because it is about to get 10 times worse, so buckle in. Now, before we dive into the heavy stuff, and trust me, it gets heavy, can we just acknowledge the absolute circus that this man has turned the entire culture into over the last few weeks? Because I hopped on my timeline the other day, right? And every single scroll was Drake this, Drake that, Drake doing something bizarre over here, Drake fabricating something over there. And I genuinely had to put my phone down and ask myself, what is this man actually doing? Like, what is the end game here? Because from the deceptions to the spectacle of him having frozen blocks placed on his courtside chairs at the Raptors arena, to this whole ghost production fiasco that he still has not properly addressed, this guy is functioning like a machine that is specifically engineered to generate confusion. And that is not an accident, you guys. That is a strategy. And we are going to unpack exactly why he is doing this and what he is desperately trying to hide. Because once you see the full picture, it all makes a disturbing kind of sense. But let me rewind for a second, right? Because some of you might be looking at the frozen chair situation and thinking, oh, that is clever album promotion. And on the surface, sure. If literally any other artist decorated their courtside seats at a professional basketball venue with branding for their upcoming project, we would all be buzzing with excitement. We would be dissecting the visuals and theorizing about the track list. That is how it works when an artist who cares about their craft drops breadcrumbs. Remember when Kendrick Lamar strategically positioned those car keys at major venues ahead of his record? That felt like an event. That felt intentional and layered and meaningful because there was genuine artistry behind the gesture. But with Drake, nah, this frozen chair nonsense is not that. This is a glorified Instagram opportunity. This is influencer behavior in the costume of a rollout, and everybody can see through it. Because this supposed album has been dangled for months, and what do we actually have? Photo ops, social media moments, viral clips with influencers, everything except the actual music. And you want to know why? I think you already do. The music is not the point right now. The noise is the point. The distraction is the point. And that distinction matters enormously when you understand what Drake is actually dealing with behind the curtain. More on that in a moment. Now, speaking of noise machines, we absolutely have to address the elephant in the room that is academics, because this man, I swear, has turned into something I genuinely cannot look away from, and not in a good way. You guys, picture this scene with me for a second. Drake is sitting somewhere, probably in that enormous mansion surrounded by all that loneliness and echo, and he is watching academics do a live stream. And instead of, I don't know, maybe working on the album that he keeps teasing to the entire planet, he decides to start texting academics in real time so that everyone watching the stream can see the reaction unfold live. And what does academics do when he gets a message from Drake? This grown man starts giggling. He starts squealing with delight like somebody just handed him a golden ticket to a chocolate factory. He is reading Drake's messages out loud on stream, cackling about how Drake noticed that some smaller creator was broadcasting from an apartment where the kitchen and the living room and the office were apparently the same room. And Drake thought this was the pinnacle of comedy. He was texting like, yo, you see that? The refrigerator is right there behind him. The man is in his office, but he's also in his kitchen and his living room all at once. And academics is losing his entire mind over this observation, repeating it back, rewinding the clip, praising Drake like this was the funniest, most perceptive thing ever uttered in the history of human communication. And I'm watching this thinking, this is what the so-called biggest rapper alive is doing with his evening, mocking somebody's living arrangement? And he pulled the same stunt in Aiden Ross's chat too, just popping up to ridicule people and generate little viral moments his supporters can cling to while the real story slips right by them.
And that brings me to the point that nobody in Drake's camp wants to confront. Because while this entire circus sideshow is happening on live streams and timelines and chat rooms, something far more disturbing is brewing beneath the surface, involving Drake's legal drama and the cascading consequences now reaching people who have nothing to do with his bruised ego. Here is where it gets genuinely serious. This next part is not gossip or hearsay. This is documented, verified, and terrifying. There is a man named James Broadnax who is currently facing severe criminal charges. We are talking about charges so severe that conviction would effectively end his life as a free person. And the primary weapon that prosecutors are using to build their case against this man, you guys, and I really need you to absorb this, are lyrics from songs that he created. They are ripping lines out of creative context and presenting them as literal confessions of guilt. They are treating artistic expression, hyperbole, metaphor, vivid storytelling, and the kind of raw narrative tradition that rap music has been constructed upon for 5 decades as if it were a sworn statement of fact delivered under oath. And the fuel powering this approach leads directly back to what Drake has been arguing in his own lawsuit. Now let me make sure everybody follows this. Drake filed his lawsuit because his feelings got obliterated in a rap battle. That is the entire foundation of this legal saga. He lost the lyrical exchange with Kendrick Lamar so comprehensively, so embarrassingly, so publicly, that instead of accepting the outcome with dignity like every rapper before him has done since the inception of competitive hip-hop, he ran straight to the courtroom. And his central argument, the pillar holding up his entire legal case, is that rap lyrics should be treated as factual statements. He wants the legal system to formally recognize that when Kendrick said certain things in his records, those were not artistic expressions or competitive boasts or metaphorical jabs or creative fiction. Drake wants the court to establish that those were literal, actionable claims of truth. And can you see the catastrophic domino effect that creates? Because if Drake succeeds in establishing that standard, or even if he merely normalizes the argument enough for other lawyers to cite it, every single rapper in this country becomes vulnerable. Every verse, every punchline, every piece of creative fiction wrapped in the language of the streets becomes potential evidence in a courtroom. And we are not dealing in hypotheticals here. We are already witnessing this play out with the James Broadnax case in real time. And here is what genuinely made me lose sleep this week. A coalition of distinguished scholars and social scientists from some of the most prestigious universities in the country. And I want to emphasize, these are not random voices on the internet or hip-hop bloggers or entertainment commentators. These are tenured professors and researchers who have dedicated their professional lives to studying language, culture, law, and racial dynamics. They all came together and released a formal academic brief that is essentially a desperate, alarmed plea to the court system. And what they wrote is so alarming that I need to walk through the key points, because you will only grasp how catastrophic Drake's actions truly are when you see it articulated by people who study these issues for a living. The scholars argued that Drake's legal approach establishes a perilous judicial standard that threatens to inject racial prejudice into courtroom proceedings while simultaneously creating devastating consequences for constitutional speech protections. They wrote, and I am pulling this directly from the analysis of their brief, that when rap lyrics are admitted as evidence on the grounds that they are literal truth, it creates a wide-open gateway for racial bias and stereotyping to corrupt legal proceedings. And empirical research, actual peer-reviewed studies conducted by actual researchers, demonstrates this conclusively. They went further and stated that treating lyrical content as factual representation poses a direct, measurable threat to protections guaranteed under the First Amendment, and that this practice has already produced what they called a demonstrable chilling effect across the entire music industry. A chilling effect, you guys, meaning artists are already hesitating, already second-guessing what they write, how they express themselves, what stories they dare to tell, because of what Drake is trying to accomplish in that courtroom. Think about what that means for the next generation of creators who are watching this unfold. And the scholars were not finished. They emphasize that it is critically essential for courts to consider the specific artistic conventions surrounding rap battles when determining whether lyrics should be interpreted as factual representations. They pointed out that even casual fans of the genre understand that competitive rap records are not meant to be taken as sworn testimony. The entire tradition of battle rap is built on exaggeration, provocation, creative aggression, and performative bravado. Everybody knows this. Your grandmother probably knows this. But Drake wants to pretend otherwise because the alternative means accepting that he lost, and his fragile constitution apparently cannot withstand that reality. Now, I want everybody to sit with this next part for a moment, because the hypocrisy here is so monumental, so breathtaking in its scope that you could slice it with a chainsaw and still have plenty left over. And this is not me speculating or editorializing. This is documented, verifiable public record. Back in November of 2022, Drake himself personally signed a petition that specifically criticized the growing trend of prosecutors weaponizing artistic expression against creators. The petition he endorsed with his own name stated, and I want you to hear these exact words, that more than any other art form, rap lyrics are essentially being used as confessions in an attempt to criminalize black creativity and artistry. His signature is on a document that calls this practice un-American and fundamentally wrong. He endorsed that position publicly, and now when it benefits him personally, when his bruised ego demands satisfaction and his wounded pride needs vindication, he is arguing the exact opposite position in a court of law. He is actively trying to establish the very precedent he once publicly condemned. And the fact that Universal Music Group themselves called this out in their legal response, explicitly labeling his position as astoundingly hypocritical, tells you everything you need to know about where even his own industry partners stand on this. And honestly, think about the devastating timing and context of all of this, because it gets even more sickening when you consider the people Drake has worked alongside throughout his career. Young Thug spent years entangled in a legal nightmare where prosecutors attempted to use his lyrics and creative output against him in ways that threatened his freedom. Drake was supposedly a devoted ally during that period. He signed that very petition while Jeffrey was fighting for his life in a courtroom. But now that Drake's own pride took a beating on wax, suddenly the principles he claimed to champion evaporate into nothing. Suddenly the rights and protections he advocated for when his associate's liberty was on the line become completely expendable because Kendrick Lamar made him look foolish in front of the entire world. That is not just hypocrisy, that is a fundamental, unforgivable betrayal of everything he pretended to represent. And you want to know what makes this entire situation burn even hotter? While Drake sits in his feelings and sends childish text messages to his favorite live streamer about somebody's apartment, three enormous figures in the rap world have actually stepped up and planted themselves on the front lines of the fight to protect artistic expression. We are talking about Tip Harris, Travis Scott, and Killer Mike. Three individuals who represent completely different philosophies, carry different histories, and embody different legacies, all standing together in solidarity to defend the man whose entire future hangs in the balance of a legal system that Drake is actively trying to corrupt. And I need people to really understand the weight of that alliance. Tip has been a tireless advocate for his community for decades. He is one of the founding pillars of Southern hip-hop leadership. Killer Mike has positioned himself as one of the most vocal, articulate champions of social justice and civic engagement in modern music. And then you have Travis Scott, somebody who has significant personal and professional ties to Drake's world, who has collaborated with him, who has been deep in his circle, and who is willing to put his name publicly on the opposition to what Drake is trying to accomplish. If that does not tell you how the industry genuinely views what is happening, if the fact that one of Drake's own former collaborators is standing against him does not shake you awake, then honestly, nothing ever will. And for Tip and Killer Mike specifically, this fight is profoundly personal because their communities have been disproportionately targeted by exactly the kind of prosecutorial overreach that Drake's lawsuit would supercharge. Southern hip-hop has been the epicenter of cases where lyrics were twisted into evidence, where creative expression was repackaged as criminal intent to lock people away. These men have watched it happen to people they grew up with, people they mentored, people from their neighborhoods, and now they are watching the supposed king of rap actively campaign to make it worse for everybody. Now let me circle back to the distraction apparatus that Drake has constructed, because it all connects perfectly.
Every frozen chair, every academic's live stream appearance, every viral moment he manufactures, every chat room pop-up, it all serves a singular purpose. He needs the timeline flooded with trivial nonsense so that nobody pays attention to the fact that his legal crusade is threatening the very foundation of an entire art form and the freedom of real human beings. The Pusha T situation is a textbook example of this distraction machinery in action. Some reference tracks surfaced where Quentin Miller, the same individual who was exposed as the ghostwriter behind significant portions of Drake's own catalog, was performing hooks for Pusha T. And Drake's most devoted followers immediately seized on this as some triumphant gotcha moment, acting like Pusha had been unmasked as a fraud who never composed an original bar in his entire career. But can we please use our critical thinking here for half a second? A hook. We are talking about a hook on a track. Since when is somebody contributing to the melodic or sung portion of a record equivalent to having your entire verse ghostwritten? The hook is a standard part of the collaborative songwriting process and always has been. The sacred tradition of hip-hop that makes it a respected, revered, competitive art form lives in the verses, the bars, the lyrical composition. Drake's entire discography has been called into question because other people were authoring his actual raps, his verses, the core of what makes a rapper a rapper. Comparing that to a hook contribution is like comparing someone hiring an architect to design their entire house versus someone else choosing the doorknobs. It is absurd. And the fact that this manufactured outrage originated from high-ranking members of Drake's inner circle confirms it was coordinated deflection. But here is the beautiful, delicious irony that Drake's supporters cannot seem to grasp. By amplifying the Pusha T hook story so aggressively, they inadvertently reignited the entire conversation about who was actually writing Drake's music all along. They brought the spotlight right back to the ghostwriting controversy. Because when you have someone like Lil Yachty composing your actual verses, you have permanently, irrevocably forfeited the right to question anyone else's creative integrity. Full stop. When you step back and examine everything happening at once, the portrait is unmistakable. The lawsuits crumbling under scrutiny, the academic community formally condemning his strategy, major artists publicly opposing his position, his album rollout amounting to nothing but hollow spectacle, his associates humiliating themselves on camera for his entertainment, and rather than demonstrating any shred of self-awareness or accountability, Drake just keeps doubling down on chaos. That is what this is ultimately about. Strategic, deliberate, purposeful chaos. He cannot win on merit. He cannot defend his legal position without contradicting his own documented beliefs. He cannot release music matching the cultural moment Kendrick Lamar created. So instead, he floods the zone with absurdity, while a man in a different jurisdiction watches his entire future hang in the balance because prosecutors feel emboldened by the very argument Drake is making in court.
I want every person watching to internalize that reality because it transcends entertainment gossip and enters the territory of actual human consequence. James Broadnax is a real person with a real life, and the framework prosecutors are using against him draws strength from what Drake is advocating for. That is not theoretical, that is happening right now. And when you combine that with everything else, the way Drake has spent years absorbing the styles, sounds, and cultural contributions of artists from communities he does not belong to, the way he has commodified regional identities for profit while offering nothing meaningful in return, the way he has treated collaborators as disposable once they stopped being useful, and now the way he is actively undermining the legal protections that safeguard the art form that made him famous, at what point do we collectively acknowledge what Kendrick Lamar has been telling us? Because every courtroom filing, every distraction campaign, every hollow promotional stunt confirms the warnings were not competitive bravado, they were prophetic. And I know people still hope the album changes everything, but even if this record turned out to be a masterpiece, that does not erase what this man has done. A great album does not undo a courtroom precedent. A catchy melody does not restore free speech protections he is trying to dismantle. Music cannot compensate for the systemic damage one person's vindictive legal campaign inflicts on an entire culture. The conversation we need is whether we are willing to hold the most commercially successful rapper in history accountable for endangering the foundation upon which that success was built. Because hip-hop became the most influential cultural force of the last half-century because artists were free to speak, embellish, provoke, battle, and express the full spectrum of human experience without their words being weaponized in a courtroom. And Drake wants to take that away because he lost a fight.
So when somebody asks me, is he a threat? I do not hesitate anymore. Yes, he is the most dangerous figure operating within the genre. Not because of his music, because he wields enormous influence and is using it to corrode the principles that allow the art form to exist. Even if his lawsuit ultimately fails, even if the courts reject every single argument he has made, prosecutors in other jurisdictions are already citing his position and using it as rhetorical ammunition. The chilling effect the scholars warned about is already tangible and measurable. The precedent does not need to be officially established by a judge to cause irreversible harm. The mere loud, public, well-funded attempt is already reshaping the landscape. So, you guys, I genuinely need to hear from you on this one. Drop your full, unfiltered thoughts in the comments, because I want to know where you stand. Do you believe Drake understands the full weight of what he is doing and simply does not care? Or do you think he genuinely cannot grasp the consequences of his actions? Is this calculated malice, or is it pure blind arrogance? I have my answer, and you can probably guess what it is by now. But I want this to be a real, substantive conversation, not just me expressing frustration into the void. And honestly, there is another question that I cannot stop thinking about. Should the culture ever forgive this man, even if he one day offered a genuine, vulnerable, sincere apology? Or has the line been crossed so far that there is no coming back regardless? That is something I want every single one of you to genuinely wrestle with. I do not have an easy answer for it myself, and I think the debate is worth having honestly and openly. And listen, if you made it this far into this discussion, thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart, sincerely. Your support and your willingness to engage with these topics means everything to me, and it is the reason I keep doing this. So leave that thumbs up if this resonated with you, subscribe if you haven't already, because I promise you this story is far from finished, and I have some material coming in the next few uploads that is going to blow the entire situation wide open in ways that nobody is expecting. The receipts are not done stacking, not even close. There are layers to this story that we have barely begun to scratch, and I promise you the picture only gets more disturbing from here. But until then, take care of yourselves, stay informed, stay critical, think for yourselves, and I will talk to you all very, very soon. Stay safe out there. Peace.